Desert night, pitch black, wind howling through rocky canyons, machine gun fire echoing off stone walls, an American SEAL team surrounded, ammunition nearly gone, blood-streaked faces, desperate eyes scanning for escape routes that didn't exist. One soldier whispered hoarsely, "This is it. No one's coming. We're already dead men." But just when every hope had evaporated, a single rifle shot crack rang out from the distant ridge. The entire valley fell silent. An enemy fighter dropped instantly. Have you ever thought it was the end until a single shot rewrote the story? Where are you watching this from? What would your first emotion be if you found yourself in this situation? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to subscribe to continue this incredible journey together. Isabella Torres, 27, possessed auburn hair pulled back in a practical bun and a compact frame that suggested strength despite her small stature. Growing up in New Mexico's harsh mountain terrain, she had spent countless hours hunting with her father across unforgiving rock faces. Those expeditions taught her to read wind patterns, practice patience, and understand that precision mattered more than speed. When she enlisted, her dream was clear: become a military sniper. But the unit had different plans. "That Barrett's too heavy for you, Torres," her commanding officer had declared during her first week. "Maybe you should stick to radios and logistics." They gave her the nickname Tagalong, someone who followed real soldiers but could never become one herself. At the rifle range, when Isabella methodically adjusted her scope settings with the care of a master craftsman, male soldiers would mock her attention to detail. "Trying to shoot the moon, sweetheart," they'd call out, laughing as she ignored their comments and continued her preparations. During tactical briefings, when she suggested establish an overwatch position on the northern ridge that overlooked their operational area, the entire room erupted in laughter. "That climb will kill you before the enemy does," someone shouted from the back. "Torres, rear support only," Sergeant Rodriguez would say, dismissing her input without consideration. Night after night, while her teammates drank beer and shared war stories that bonded them together, Isabella slipped away to the training ground. She would lie in the cold sand, practicing breathing techniques, perfecting her trigger control, and studying the mathematical relationships between distance, wind speed, and bullet trajectory. During these solitary sessions, she remembered her father's words from their last hunting trip together. "Mija, you don't need many shots in life, but the ones you do take, they must count for everything." The constant dismissal created a cold patience inside her, like steel being forged through repeated heating and cooling. Each "maybe next time" and "stick to what you know" added another layer to her determination. She studied every tactical manual she could access. She memorized ballistics charts for different ammunition types. She practiced estimating distances without rangefinders and calculating wind drift without instruments. Isabella Torres was being systematically underestimated by people who had never bothered to test her actual capabilities. But she understood something they didn't. Being overlooked was the greatest tactical advantage she could possibly possess. While they saw a small woman trying to play soldier, she was becoming a precision instrument designed for one purpose: delivering accurate fire when accuracy determined the difference between life and death. The transformation wasn't visible to observers. Isabella performed her assigned duties without complaint, maintained her equipment to perfect standards, and never argued with decisions that relegated her to support roles. But inside, something deadly and patient was taking shape. Her teammates assumed her quiet acceptance meant she had accepted the mission briefing indicated moderate resistance and straightforward tactical requirements. Intelligence was wrong on both counts. What waited for them in that desert valley would test every assumption they had made about combat, teamwork, and the value of underestimated assets. Isabella Torres was about to prove that the quietest person in the room might be the most dangerous when danger demanded action. The mission parameters seemed straightforward: rescue 3 American engineers captured by insurgents and held in a remote village compound. Intelligence reported approximately 20 lightly armed fighters with standard small arms and minimal coordination. Intelligence was catastrophically wrong. When the helicopter dropped the SEAL team into the valley, machine gun fire erupted from concealed positions that suggested months of preparation and professional military training. RPGs screamed overhead, exploding against canyon walls with precision that indicated sophisticated targeting capabilities. What should have been a 20-minute extraction became a desperate fight for survival against an entire battalion that had been waiting in ambush. The SEAL team split into 3 fire teams, trying to establish defensive positions among the rubble of abandoned buildings. But superior numbers and coordinated tactics forced them into an increasingly small perimeter with limited cover and no escape routes. Radio chatter told the story of a mission falling apart. Alpha team pinned down multiple machine gun positions. Bravo taking heavy fire from elevated positions. Charlie team, we've got RPGs coming in from 3 directions. Rodriguez's voice cut through the static with growing desperation. Base, this is Talon 6. We are surrounded and heavily outnumbered. Ammunition running low. Request immediate evacuation. The response crushed every hope they had maintained. Talon 6, Negati. I've on air support. Weather conditions prevent helicopter operations. You are on your own until dawn. Dawn was 7 hours away. Isabella sat with the communications team, her Barrett rifle across her knees, listening to her teammates slowly being overwhelmed by an enemy that had planned this engagement perfectly. One soldier whispered what everyone was thinking. We won't last 30 minutes against this. The mathematics were brutal and simple. 22 Americans against more than 200 well-armed, well-positioned fighters who controlled every advantage. Isabella's internal war began raging with intensity that matched the external combat. If she followed orders, she would remain in the rear area, maintaining radio contact while watching her teammates get systematically eliminated. If she broke protocol, she could attempt to reach the northern ridge she had identified during mission planning, the position that had been dismissed as tactically impractical. But breaking orders meant risking everything on her own capabilities that had never been tested under real combat conditions. Fear crashed over her in waves. What if she missed critical shots? What if she gave away her position to enemy counter-snipers? What if her attempt to help actually made the situation worse for everyone? But anger provided fuel for courage. She remembered every dismissive comment, every condescending laugh, every assumption that she wasn't capable of contributing to real combat operations. Her father's voice echoed through the chaos. When everyone says it's over, mija, that's when your shot matters most. Isabella made her decision with crystal clarity. She keyed her radio one final time. Communications maintaining position, she reported, knowing it was a necessary lie. Then she grabbed her rifle, spare ammunition, and rangefinder and began the treacherous climb toward the ridge that might save her teammates' lives. The ascent was everything her teammates had predicted: steep, exposed, and brutally difficult to navigate while carrying 35 pounds of sniper equipment. Sharp rocks tore at her hands and knees. Desert wind carried the sounds of intensifying combat from the valley below. Each meter climbed represented a question that might determine everyone's fate. Am I climbing toward their salvation, or just postponing the inevitable? But Isabella had studied this terrain during mission preparation. She knew every rock formation, every potential route, every angle that would provide concealment from enemy observation. As she climbed, automatic weapons fire continued echoing from the village. Each burst meant her teammates were still alive, still fighting, but also still dying one by one as their ammunition dwindled and enemy pressure increased. Isabella reached the ridgeline just as Rodriguez's voice crackled through her earpiece. All units, prepare for final defensive positions. We're almost out of options. She settled into a prone shooting position among the granite boulders, her Barrett rifle steady on its bipod. Through her scope, the village spread out below like a deadly chessboard, where her teammates were trapped in an impossible game. She could see every enemy position, every muzzle flash, every tactical advantage that the insurgents had established through careful planning, but she could also see something else. Opportunities that ground-level perspective made impossible to identify. Isabella Torres had spent her entire military career being overlooked and underestimated. Now, for the first time, being invisible was exactly what the situation demanded. Her finger found the trigger and she began the most important shooting of her life. 22 lives depended on her ability to deliver precision fire from a position that everyone had dismissed as tactically impossible. The ridge that was supposed to be too difficult to reach had become the only place where victory was even remotely possible. Isabella whispered the same prayer her father had taught her before every hunting expedition: make it count. Then she began systematically changing the course of a battle that everyone had already written off as unwinnable. Rodriguez was reaching for his radio to initiate surrender negotiations when the impossible happened. Crack! A single rifle shot echoed across the valley from high above their position. The heavy machine gun that had been systematically destroying their defensive perimeter went silent instantly. Every seal in the valley froze in stunned disbelief. "Who the hell fired that?" Rodriguez demanded, spinning around to identify the source of salvation that couldn't possibly exist. Before anyone could respond, another shot rang out, then another. The RPG team that had been preparing to finish off their position scattered as their gunner dropped without warning. A sniper's nest that had been picking off anyone who moved was suddenly abandoned when its occupant simply vanished. The enemy mortar crew that had been bracketing their location ceased operations when their spotter collapsed. Rodriguez and his men initially assumed they were receiving support from an entire platoon of friendly snipers positioned around the valley, but the tactical situation made that impossible. They were the only American forces within 100 kilometers of this location. Through his binoculars, Rodriguez focused on the northern ridge, searching for the source of their miraculous salvation. What he saw defied everything he thought he knew about tactical possibilities and personnel capabilities. Isabella Torres lay perfectly camouflaged among the granite boulders, her Barrett rifle steady as a mountain itself, her eye pressed against the scope, breathing contro. Eled, her entire being focused on the deadly mathematics of long-range precision shooting under combat conditions. The woman they had called Tag-Along was single-handedly dismantling a battalion-size enemy force with surgical precision. Isabella wasn't shooting randomly or desperately. Every round was calculated for maximum tactical impact. First, she eliminated the machine gun teams that were preventing American movement. Then, she targeted the RPG operators who could destroy their defensive positions. Next came the spotters and radio operators who were coordinating enemy fire. Finally, she began systematically eliminating command elements who were directing the entire assault. Each shot shifted the tactical balance in favor of the surrounded Americans. But the most incredible aspect wasn't her accuracy, it was her positioning. Isabella had somehow climbed a nearly vertical rock face in darkness, carrying heavy sniper equipment, and established a firing position that provided clear lines of sight to threats that ground-level perspectives made invisible. Rodriguez watched through his scope as Isabella shifted positions between shots, never firing from the same location twice, never giving enemy counter-snipers an opportunity to locate and neutralize her. She moved through that rocky terrain like she had been born there, using shadows and stone formations for concealment in ways that seemed almost supernatural. Her voice came through the radio with calm professionalism that contrasted sharply with the chaos surrounding them. "Guardian Angel to Talon 6, move northeast toward the compound. I'll provide overwatch." Rodriguez realized he was witnessing something that would be studied in military academies for decades. A single operator changing the outcome of an entire engagement through perfect application of marksmanship skills under extreme pressure. The tide of battle was turning with each shot Isabella fired. Enemy fighters who had been confident in their overwhelming numerical advantage began withdrawing to more defensible positions. The coordinated assault that had trapped the Americans dissolved into confused, scattered resistance as key personnel disappeared one by one. Isabella's methodical elimination of high-value targets was breaking the backbone of their entire tactical plan. But she wasn't finished yet. Through her scope, Isabella identified the ultimate target, the enemy commander, who was attempting to reorganize his scattered forces for a final assault on the trapped Americans. The distance was nearly 1,200 meters. Wind was gusting unpredictably through the canyon. The target was moving erratically behind partial cover, clearly aware that a sniper was operating somewhere above. It was the most difficult shot of her life, attempted under conditions that would challenge any marksman in the world. Isabella controlled her breathing, calculated wind drift and bullet drop with mathematical precision, and waited for the perfect moment when her target would be exposed long enough for accurate engagement. She had one chance. If she missed, the enemy commander would likely locate her position and eliminate her with concentrated fire from multiple weapon systems. More importantly, her teammates would lose their only advantage in a fight they couldn't win through conventional means. 22 lives depended on this single bullet finding its mark across more than a kilometer of desert air filled with swirling wind patterns. Isabella whispered the same prayer her father had taught her before every critical shot. One shot, make it count. The Barrett rifle bucked against her shoulder as the round left the muzzle at nearly 3,000 feet per second. 1,200 meters away, Rodriguez watched through his binoculars as the enemy commander dropped instantly, his radio scattering across the sand. The remaining fighters, seeing their leader fall to an invisible sniper who could reach them from impossible distances, began a panicked retreat into the surrounding desert. Within minutes, the valley fell completely silent, except for wind whistling through broken buildings. Isabella Torres had just saved 22 lives with fewer than 30 carefully placed shots fired from a position that everyone had dismissed as tactically impossible. As the extraction helicopters finally arrived at dawn, Rodriguez couldn't stop staring at the northern ridge where their salvation had appeared. The woman they had spent months underestimating had just demonstrated marksmanship skills that belonged in military legend. But perhaps more importantly, she had shown them that their assumptions about tactical possibilities were as wrong as their assumptions about personal capabilities. Isabella Torres climbed aboard the helicopter without fanfare, her equipment secured, her demeanor as professionally calm as always. But Rodriguez noticed something different in her eyes. The doubt was gone, replaced by quiet confidence that came from proving herself when proof mattered most. Dawn broke over the desert as extraction helicopters touched down at Falcon Base, rotor wash kicking up clouds of sand and dust. Isabella Torres stepped onto the tarmac, her uniform still marked with desert grime and dried blood from the rocky climb, the Barrett rifle slung across her shoulder like an extension of herself. Word of the miraculous rescue had already spread through military communication channels with the speed that extraordinary stories always traveled among professionals who understood their significance. Personnel emerged from buildings across the compound, drawn by whispers of an impossible tale. A single sniper had saved an entire SEAL team from annihilation. The same soldiers who had mocked her marksmanship training now stood in respectful silence. Rodriguez approached first, his face showing a complex mixture of gratitude, shame, and newfound respect that would take time to fuel. "Le process. Torres," he began, then stopped. "How do you thank someone for rewriting the laws of tactical possibility?" Isabella met his gaze with steady composure. "Sergeant, what you did up there, I've never seen anything like it. The precision, the positioning, the tactical awareness." He shook his head slowly. "We owe you everything." Before Isabella could respond, a commotion stirred through the gathered crowd as Colonel Whitaker emerged from the command building. The colonel was legendary throughout naval special warfare for his ice-cold demeanor and impossibly high standards. In 15 years of service, personnel could count on one hand the number of times they had seen him express approval for anyone's performance. He walked directly to Isabella, stopping precisely 3 feet away according to military protocol. The entire base seemed to hold its breath as 2 figures faced each other in the desert morning light. Then Colonel Whitaker did something that shattered every assumption about military recognition and personal achievement. He raised his right hand in a crisp, formal salute, the kind of recognition reserved for acts of extraordinary valor that transcended normal performance standards. The gathered personnel froze in stunned silence. SEALs who prided themselves on maintaining composure under any circumstances stood with mouths slightly open. Rodriguez removed his cap, his eyes showing emotions he had never expected to feel. Isabella returned the salute with equal precision, her spine straight, her expression reflecting years of training and determination that had finally found proper recognition. When both hands were lowered, Colonel Whitaker spoke in a voice that carried across the silent compound. "What you accomplished last night will be studied in naval special warfare training programs for decades to come." He paused, letting the significance of his wobble. "Odds register completely. 27 confirmed enemy kills at ranges exceeding 800 meters in darkness under extreme pressure with 0 friendly casualties. This represents the textbook definition of exceptional marksmanship under combat conditions." The crowd began to murmur with appreciation, but the colonel raised his hand for continued silence. More importantly, this operation demonstrates that tactical innovation and personal initiative can overcome impossible odds when applied by someone with proper training and absolute dedication. He gestured toward the northern ridge, barely visible in the morning haze. "The position you selected and successfully utilized was dismissed by experienced tactical planners as impractical. Your achievement proves that conventional thinking sometimes creates the very limitations it seeks to avoid." Isabella finally spoke, her voice clear and strong. "Just doing my duty, sir, following the training you provided and applying it when circumstances required action." Colonel Whitaker almost smiled, an expression so rare that several personnel would remember this moment for the rest of their careers. "Torres, your assigned duty was communication support and rear area security. What you did was redefine the tactical possibilities available to small unit operations." Rodriguez stepped forward, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by genuine respect. "Torres, I owe you an apology. We all do. We failed to recognize capabilities that could have been utilized much more effectively throughout this deployment." Isabella looked around at the faces surrounding her, faces that had shown skepticism and condescension for months. Now, those same faces reflected something entirely different, the respect that comes from witnessing excellence under conditions where excellence meant survival. "Apology accepted, Sergeant. But we're a team. Teams support each other when support is needed most." From that moment forward, nobody called her tag-along ever again. News of the Desert Ridge sniper spread throughout military networks like wildfire, though OP. Irrational security prevented media outlets from reporting specific details. Within the military community, however, Isabella Torres became a legend whose story was told and retold in training facilities across multiple service branches. The basic narrative, a single sniper saving an entire SEAL team through exceptional marksmanship from an impossible position, became powerful evidence that capability existed in unexpected places, waiting for the right circumstances to reveal itself. Female recruits entering military service heard Isabella's story during orientation briefings, no longer as cautionary tales about physical limitations, but as proof that excellence transcended traditional expectations. "If Torres can do it, so can we," became an unofficial motto that spread through women's military communities. But Isabella herself remained characteristically modest about the recognition and attention. 3 days after the rescue, Rodriguez found her at the rifle range, methodically working through precision shooting drills with the same dedication she had always demonstrated. "You know you don't have to prove anything anymore," he said, settling beside her shooting position. Isabella adjusted her scope and aligned another target. "I'm not trying to prove anything, Sergeant. I'm trying to maintain proficiency." Rodriguez watched her place 5 shots within a 1-inch group at 600 meters. "For what? You've already demonstrated capabilities that exceed anything we've ever seen." "Because next time the conditions might be different," Isabella replied, reloading with practiced efficiency. "Next time the wind might be stronger, the distance longer, the stakes higher. I need to be ready for whatever next time brings." Rodriguez realized something profound about the person sitting beside him. Isabella's extraordinary performance hadn't resulted from natural talent or fortunate circumstances. It was the product of relentless self-improvement driven by standards that exceeded anything external authorities had ever demanded. While others had been satisfied with meeting minimum requirements, Isabella had been pursuing mastery, The respect she had earned wasn't just about one night of exceptional shooting. It was about the thousands of hours of preparation that had made that night possible. 6 months later, Isabella received orders for Advanced Sniper Instructor School, becoming the first woman assigned to that position in the program's history. Her final evening at the base was marked by an informal gathering where teammates shared gratitude that many of them had struggled to express adequately. Rodriguez raised his coffee cup in a toast to Torres, who taught us that the most dangerous assumption is underestimating the person sitting right beside you. Isabella looked around the room at faces that had become familiar through shared experience and mutual respect. "I want to say something," she began, setting down her cup. 6 months ago, I was frustrated about being overlooked and underutilized. I thought the problem was that you needed to change your opinions about my capabilities. She paused, choosing her words carefully. But I learned something important on that ridge. I wasn't climbing up there to prove anyone wrong. I was climbing because it was the right thing to do. Recognition came afterward, and it's meaningful, but it wasn't the motivation. Rodriguez nodded slowly. What was the motivation? Being prepared when preparation mattered, having skills that could save lives when lives needed saving. Everything else was secondary. Her final words became part of the culture at Falcon Base. Don't train to prove doubters wrong. Train to be ready when readiness determines everything. News organizations eventually picked up versions of the story, though operational security limited details. The basic framework, female soldier saves unit through exceptional marksmanship, became a powerful symbol for capability existing beyond Treadit. Ional expectations. Young women considering military careers began citing the Ridge Shooter as evidence that their ambitions were achievable rather than unrealistic. But the most fitting recognition came from an unexpected source. The northern ridge where Isabella had made her impossible shots was officially designated as Overwatch Point Torres on military topographical maps. Future units operating in that region would know that the rocky outcropping had once been the position of a sniper who saved 22 lives through perfect shots delivered from a place everyone had dismissed as tactically impossible. Have you ever seen someone dismissed as nothing only to rise and save everyone? Share your story in the comments because sometimes the quietest person carries the loudest victory. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us never to underestimate the potential in people around us.